Hey! We are here today to tell you about post-revolutionary war treatments and establishments of the mentally ill.
Did you know that most of the so-called mentally ill were actually suffering from what we know today as post-traumatic stress disorder?
Much of Europe had begun studies and practice with the mentally ill. But the Americas still hadn't established any understanding of the ill at all. Then the Revolutionary War hit. After the Revolutionary War, times were tough, especially for those who had PTSD. They were often considered possessed or mentally ill. And many didn't understand what was happening to their loved ones. So drastic measures were taken in order to help the soldiers coming home.
A case stated that a mentally ill man was locked in a barn filled with animals for several weeks. Later the door was opened to see if he was cured. But all they found were his hands, supposedly eaten by pigs. The treatment they thought to cure the ill was either solidarity or death. The mentally ill in this time period weren't just men with PTSD, but some people born with mental retardation, slowness, and even troubles with common communication with others.
After the war till about the 1800s, many of the ill died from lack of help or treatment. Many men, women, and children were affected. Then in 1801 the first real establishment for the mentally ill. The practice of helping these people truly began. But it didn't get better, it got worse.
In fact, it got terrible. The help establishments were turned into prison-like places. The mentally ill were treated like prisoners, whipped, chained, and beaten into obedience. The ill became more distant, which made the beatings, starvation, and solidarity last longer. One so-called doctor even tried to perform a cure on a patient by putting her in a room filled with more mentally insane prisoners who were so psychologically unstable from the treatment, killed her. Imagine each of the 214 stars behind me stand for 50 mistreated people. That's 10,700 too many. And that's not counting the dead, injured, or unaccounted for patients. Then in 1841 a woman came along that would be known as a savior of these people.
Dorothea Dix began a voice for the people. She pressed for state-funded hospitals, not prisons where public offenders were often put in as well. No more cages, beatings, or embarrassment for the ill. She helped start 5 real hospitals and pushed for civil rights. Also in 1841 a revolutionary man came to the stage, Dr. John Galt.
Dr. Galt worked at the first publicly funded hospital. He introduced drugs and therapy called talk therapy. He also suggested shorter stays instead of permanent residencies for certain patients, like the ones with PTSD.
With these advancements in 1841, America was further known as having some of the best hospitals and asylums in the world. America continued to help and save these mentally ill.
Then the Civil War hit. Many of the doctors and nurses went to aid the injured soldiers. Hospitals and asylums were combined to make room for the soldiers. Then underfunded and crowded, many of the ill went into a type of remission. Many escaped and some wreaked havoc on nearby towns. The numbers of raids within the asylums got higher. One hospital containing over 150 people had only 2 staff members working. The staff deserted after a raid, locking the doors. Taking a huge step back in our history.